Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Tish.
I'm Lily.
And together we are
Haunted Housewives.
So today we are going to talk about one of the things that we get lots of questions about.
By everyone.
By everyone. Which is...
Extreme haunts.
Extreme.
Yes.
And we're going to address what does and doesn't make a haunt extreme. We're going to talk about some common misconceptions, some experiences that we have had, and talk a little bit about the background and history of extreme haunts. So let's start off with what people think an extreme haunt is.
Yeah, I think people have this idea that an extreme haunt is somewhere where you get assaulted and abused, and they may have seen videos of other things that aren't necessarily a haunt and consider that an extreme haunt. But from our experience, I don't want to say there's none of that. There's a little bit. That's why you go.
We don't want to sully the dark reputation of some of the places we've been.
It's not what a lot of people think it is. They think it's just this extreme...
Content warning. I think there are people who think of it as sort of a BDSM type experience.
Yeah.
That think of it as like necessarily really, dark and sexy.
Right. And I think people think that when they think of touch.
Yeah.
Like, just because a haunt is touch doesn't mean things are going to happen like that.
Yeah.
There are a couple haunts we've been to that are light touch.
Yeah.
And they just kind of mess with your hair and grab at you, but
grab your ankles.
Yes. Which is super creepy, by the way.
But not necessarily scarring or even upsetting.
Yeah.
I think at the other end of the spectrum, one of the other misconceptions about extreme haunts is that extreme means production values.
Yes.
That it means that it's going to be really fancy and really technologically advanced, like you're walking into a movie.
Right.
And I mean, a couple of years ago, Wednesday and I went to Universal's Hollywood Horror Nights, and it was beautiful. It was technologically extraordinary, but it was not what I would characterize as an extreme haunt. And, conversely, like the extreme haunts I've been to aren't necessarily super high tech.
No. It's definitely more interaction, I would say. You interact with the actors more. Yeah. You have a little bit more time with them. You are literally in a scene where you use all of your senses. You don't always use taste, but sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do.
But the extreme ones, you do have the touch factor incorporated along with everything else, because you are literally involved in the scene and what's happening.
So that's one of the things that happens. Like, one of the questions that we get repeatedly, and one of the questions that we hear every time we go to a haunted house is, can they touch you?
Right.
And that seems to be the barrier that people really don't want to cross, because at that point, the haunt goes from being something you simply walk through and watch to being something you end up participating in.
Yes, and that makes you a little more vulnerable, and people don't like to be vulnerable, especially with strangers.
Right, and vulnerable is a really good word for that, because I think that anytime you go to a haunted house, you're making yourself vulnerable. You are confronting the things that scare you, and you're kind of putting yourself out there. And extreme haunts extend those barriers a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I would agree with that.
So
Yeah.
you can have a haunted attraction. Well, the first thing that happens is they tell you, you're going to be touched. You will be touched here. But that's not necessarily the only thing that happens.
Right.
I kind of want to wait on that a little bit and talk about what makes an extreme attraction an extreme attraction. So what is it not? What is not an extreme haunted attraction? Like, what are things that people think of when they assume that something is extreme?
Well, definitely the touch factor.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about, everybody brings that up all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess they wouldn't push your boundaries. You wouldn't be made to. I mean, I guess you feel vulnerable in any kind of haunt a little bit if you allow yourself. You have to allow yourself to be in the moment and be a little bit vulnerable so that you can. I mean, honestly, in the end, you feel so much stronger for having gone through it.
Yeah, I think that there are potentially a couple of different broad categories of extreme haunt, and they overlap. But
Yeah, because some of them are very psychological. They mess with your mind more so than physically.
Yeah,
and then others mess with you definitely more physically. But honestly, physically does something to your mental health as well.
Yeah. We have some experience with extreme haunted attractions. We haven't been to a ton of them. We've been to several touch haunts.
Yes.
And a handful of extreme haunts. What's the difference between a touch haunt and an extreme haunt?
Well, the touch haunts that we've been to that were not extreme haunts, they were very light touch. So as you're walking by, they might grab at you. Yep, they'll touch your hair. But it's just kind of a little bit more to the experience that you're already having walking through the haunt. So you're walking through the haunt, you're going through different rooms, different areas that they might have, and somebody, along with what they're saying to you or what's happening in the room, they may touch you or spray you with something, make you smell horrible things. But that itself doesn't make it an extreme haunt.
No.
That's just an extension of the haunt that they have.
Yeah, it's sort of like saying the touch is not the point, but if we happen to touch you, it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
So we've
honestly, a little bit, the extreme haunts are like that too, though. They're just warning you, like, in part of our story, you're going to be touched, whether that be like shoved against a wall or made to touch something that might shock you. That I dislike very much. Or
locked in a cage, buried alive.
Or like, come sit here on the bed with me and scratch my beard. It's a little itchy. I wouldn't say that's an extreme touch.
No, it's not necessarily
the touch that makes it.
It's not aggressive. It's not a violation, but it's
weird.
It's weird. It's breaking down that barrier between actor and guest, where you're not quite sure.
It's kind of intimate sometimes.
What's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so history of extreme haunted attractions. Please feel free to weigh in on this, but as far as I can tell, the first really prominent national extreme haunted attraction was Blackout.
Oh.
And I think that was founded 2009.
Oh.
And gained a lot of attention around 2010, 2011. Blackout started in New York City, expanded to some other large urban areas across the United States. And the idea there was that you would go through this experience alone. You would sign a waiver. We'll get to the waivers later. You would sign a waiver, and you would walk through this 30, 40-minute experience by yourself, navigating different scenarios and encountering different characters. And the idea was, I think, to place guests in the center of a horror movie. If you're a horror fan like us, you know, you kind of you want to know what that's like. You want to know how you would respond in those circumstances. And Blackout was an attempt to do that. And after Blackout, there were a number of different kinds of experiences across the country that I don't want to say modeled themselves on that approach, but realized that there were different ways to engage with patrons. That there were people out there who were hungry for something more than, you know, I just want to walk past this tableau and see something creepy. That there were people who
would go, because that would be the thing. Like, you might have an idea for something like that and think, oh my gosh, no one's going to come because people freak out, you know, about can they touch you. So, you know, seeing something like that succeed, absolutely.
And one of the early adopters was here in the Pittsburgh area. Lily and I are both Pittsburgh based, and we can talk about our firsthand experience with this particular kind of haunt.
The basement.
The basement, which was an offshoot of the very successful, very cinematic Scare House here in Pittsburgh. How would you describe the basement?
First of all, it was our first one, so like it was really intense. And the first year we went in 2016, it was that particular version of it was very intense and very aggressive. But we were scared to go. We had read everything. We watched videos. We read all the reviews, and really they don't tell you a whole lot. We didn't know what to expect. And then one night we just said, let's do it. We bought our ticket last minute. We just left a haunt, got in the car, bought our tickets, and said, we have to go now. We spent the money.
We spent the money.
And then you get there, and they're like, sign this waiver, give us all your stuff, your keys to your car, your phone, everything has to be locked up. And and then this is the funniest thing. I still can't believe this happened. We were waiting with, they have the group of people waiting. Like, they call you into groups and then you wait again. But we were waiting, and there was this couple next to us, and it was like their first time. I don't know. It might have been the lady's first time at a haunt.
I think it was her first time ever going through a haunted attraction. She and her boyfriend were there on a date.
Yeah.
And they were called in ahead of us. And oh, by the way, they were about our age.
Yeah.
They were not young kids.
They weren't like a young couple. No.
They were our age.
Yeah.
So the basement would call people in, singly or in groups, at intervals of what, about 2 minutes?
It was somebody, maybe 3 minutes, something like that. They would, was there a bell or a knock? Or both? I can't remember. There was a way they knew. There was a timer. A timer went up. Yes, it's in our review.
It's in our review.
6 steps down to the left.
And oh my gosh. And this couple was called in ahead of us, and we were interacting with the host, the sort of the hype woman who was getting us ready for this experience, and the other people who were in the holding pen with us. And they were down there maybe a minute.
Probably not even.
And a bell rang, and they came running back through the door.
Yeah.
You saying, what was that? What was that?
Yes.
That was some
that was
that was some scary shit down there.
I don't think they made it past the first room.
No, they couldn't have in that time.
And then within, like, as we're processing, these people are running away. The host is like, "You're up," and sent us in. We were like, "What?" I can't explain the smell. This is my thing. The smell, when you, oh my gosh, it's like mold and mildew and boar urine.
So you will encounter this in regular haunts. There are many excellent haunts that use the sense of smell to get to you and to, you know, make you feel sick. They do. Yeah. They want to make you feel uneasy.
Right. It's the unease.
The basement specifically used
boar
urine.
Because it makes our body respond.
And it was a unique, immediately recognizable, dank, clinging smell. You walked through that door and, like, before you saw or heard anything, the sense of smell.
Yep. That came wafting up the stairs. And then we had to go in the dark down the stairs where you can't see, but you can hear a TV with static, which was another. All of it.
So that first experience, I mean, I honestly, at the end of it, I was afraid that our friendship was over. I was afraid that was it. We were done. We were not going to be friends anymore. She was never going to speak to me again because we had been through this, this extreme experience together. And that's something about extreme haunts. They push you to extremes.
Yeah.
They make you feel emotions. They put you in situations that hopefully you don't encounter every day.
Right.
One thing that the basement did very well was it made you really uncomfortable. They asked you questions. Like they would. Lily and I went through together. Just because you go through an extreme haunt with somebody else isn't going to make you safer.
No. Sometimes they use that against you.
In fact, you know, I would say it might be worse because they kept asking us things like, what is the worst thing about her?
Yeah. What's her worst quality?
What has she lied to you about? They would try to pit us against each other and separate us. And it wasn't so much that it was physically challenging, though it was that. I mean, the basement did things like put a hood over your head.
Yes. Which is a funny thing to think about. Like, why is that so... Like, you're in a controlled environment, and they're putting a hood over your head. Right. Maybe it's just because you don't know. It's the unknown. Because, I mean, it was really the first time it happened to us. It's happened to us a couple times since. But every time I start to feel like I can't breathe. And I don't know what's going on around me. Maybe you hear or smell weird things happening. But I remember that being a moment of us. We had gone through, it was maybe our third room. I think we were in a hallway, and they had put the hoods on us. And we may have been tied together. I don't know. I feel like something was weird with my hands too. But we were hooded and we were in the hallway, and I just remember whispering, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because of course there's a safe word. So like if you need it, and we were like, "Nope, we're gonna hold out. We're good."
Yeah. They tell you ahead of time. Like many extreme haunts will give you a safe word. You have to sign a waiver because you will be touched, and you're often in very deep darkness, which puts you at risk, and they want to make sure that you're aware of the liability since you're stumbling around in the darkness.
Per usual, honestly.
Yeah, like this makes any difference. I have fallen from a stable standing position outside. I will just fall.
And then some regular haunts will just have a scare actor at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, shout out Wells Township. Though Wells Township is in fact light touch.
Mm-hmm.
But part of what happens in a place like that is it's physically challenging. Yeah, I had to crawl
a little bit, yeah.
And, you know, we were confined in small spaces.
Yeah.
But the point of that was not so much the physical restriction.
No.
But it was the psychological challenges.
Yes.
It was, you know, you're going through this with your friend and they're trying to turn you against each other and see if you'll say bad things about each other to get out of a bad situation.
Or they have you like uncomfortably close to somebody who hasn't showered and they're greasy and smell and they're shoving your face in your armpit, you know, giving you a hug, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah, it places you in extreme circumstances to see how you respond. So the basement is one of our examples of something that is
more
physically
psychological.
challenging.
Yeah.
But mostly a psychological challenge. Let's talk about a place that is very physically challenging, which is Terror Town. That was the haunt in the Cincinnati area, formerly run by All Hallows Eve. They're I think partnering up with someone else to do something slightly different this year, but they had an attraction called Terror Town.
Yeah, that was so different. You know, we went in, not that we thought we knew what to expect from an extreme haunt, but somewhat. We thought we knew a little bit of what it might be like. And we had known, in this case, we knew someone who had gone through, and we trusted her judgment that, you know, we weren't going to get seriously injured. We drive all the way out there and go to this haunt, but it was way more physical than I had thought it would be, which does mess with you psychologically.
Yeah.
But the physical aspect was way different. The, you know, being stuffed in a cage and then rolling it over, or also they took us, like, immediately separated us, which isn't that uncommon, but we had never been there before. We didn't know anything, and they just like grabbed. I think they grabbed me first. They threw me on the trail, and I didn't know what direction to go. I didn't know anything. I kept trying to go the wrong way, and they kept yelling at me. And I just basically went through the whole thing. And she got dragged and buried.
I was buried alive. Somebody stole my shoe and ran off with it and stuck me in a wooden coffin in the ground and threw dirt on top of me.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. But it was a much more physically uncomfortable experience.
Because you got wet early on. You got wet. You smelled bad. They rubbed like cat food in my hair, and then flour. Like it was physically uncomfortable in that way.
They were spraying water at us. They were spraying fake blood at us. Because it was outdoors, we were incredibly muddy.
Yes.
And they also they tried to make us eat things.
Yes. I mean, they're sometimes in the basement. They also have that component of eating a bug or drinking some kind of weird solution or taking pills.
Yeah.
But this was a different eating experience. This was like drink the mud.
Yeah. It really was physically challenging because there were places where we were crawling on the ground,
rolling. There's a lot of rolling in the mud like a pig.
And it was. I mean, my comparison was it kind of felt like boot camp. Yeah. It felt like, you know, we're going to put you through something physically challenging to kind of break you down. But the interesting thing was there was a point at Terror Town where one of the actors came up to me and put his arm around my neck and started to drag me backwards, and I could hear the rest of the people in our group gasping and screaming. He had his hand behind me So he was holding me up, and he's leaning over and whispering in my ear, I've got you, are you okay? And at that point, I kind of became a prop in the story. I wasn't physically in danger. He clearly was trained to know what he was doing. I felt perfectly safe the whole time, but it looked horrific from the people who were watching this.
Or like when I was getting waterboarded and I had a mask on because it was 2020, and he didn't realize I had my mask on, and I literally couldn't breathe, and I was like, and every time I did that, all the water from my mask went to my
Do you want to explain to the nice people what you mean by I was getting waterboarded?
I know there's a trowel. And he kept taking the bowl of water and shoving it in my face, so all the water kept hitting my face. But I had my mask on, and I couldn't breathe at all ever. And at some point, he looked at me and he was like, "Oh my God, do you still have your mask on? Take it off!" Like, and then another time, remember my eyes? I had my contacts in, and my eyes were all red because the fake blood got in there. And then there was something else in there, and then flour went in there, and I couldn't see anything. And one of the actors was like, "Here, use my shirt to clean, wipe your eyes." Like, I was like, "That's very kind, but like your shirt is dirty too."
We are not encouraging anybody. We're trying to tell people that extreme haunts are okay. We are not encouraging anybody with this. Like, oh yeah,
okay, yeah.
Do you remember that time I got waterboarded? Super fun. Highly recommend.
It's really hard to explain because I do feel like in those moments, like you can tell that you can be like, stop, like that. I don't like, and they would, we go along with it because it's more fun to go along with the story and go along with the plot. And when they ask you questions, answer them. They don't have to be truthful. For some reason, we seem to think they have to be truthful, and we will rack our brain for the right answer.
All right.
But you can actually just say anything.
Yeah, but we never do. We'll try to think of the earnest, honest answer if you ask us a question. Because we're idiots, and this is why we do what we do. But extreme haunts should be safe. Yeah. If they are properly run, they are safe. I mean, we have not had...
You can have these crazy things happen.
Look at us. We are not young. We are not young, and we have been through extreme haunts, and we are fine.
Yeah, right.
And it's another way of facing fear. I think one of the great attractions of haunted houses is the same attraction that you get when you're on a roller coaster, or you're on a bungee, or you're trying something that seems dangerous and forces you to face fear, but is actually safe.
Yeah,
done properly. It's a way of finding out stuff about yourself. It's a way of confronting fear and moving through it. That I
and
think,
it feels so good after.
Yeah,
so good. We're like, though honestly, the first time we were a little stunned.
Yeah,
but it took us a week or two to feel great.
Yeah, we kept texting each other. You okay? You still okay?
And we kept talking about different things that happened, and
but I think the idea is to put you through an experience that makes you move past your limits.
Yeah.
And it's a safe way to do it. And if you are going to a place that is reputable, well run, you're going to be safe.
Yes. I agree.
You're going to be fine. And like most of the places we know that are touch haunts are also, run by people who they know what they're doing. They're monitoring the guests. They're vetting the actors. They're making sure that anybody who goes through is going to have a good experience.
Yes. Right.
So,
because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's to have fun.
Yeah.
And extreme haunts help you do something that you wouldn't normally do, experience things that you don't normally experience in a safe environment. And you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
And your friends.
Is she really a good friend? Really? No, and I was thinking about the fact that the extreme haunts that we've been to are also interestingly careful about the way they put people in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think either one of the haunts that we mentioned specifically, either the basement or Terror Town, ever just had a damsel in distress figure for the
Right.
sake of...
There weren't like scenes that also were there to terrify you.
Yeah.
You were part of it.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't like...
Yeah, if you're going to be disgusted, it's because
Yeah.
you're, sticking your hands in what looks like a chest cavity, or
Yes.
or you're eating this weird thing, you don't know what it is. But
You're hanging tinsel that is charged with...
or you're hanging tinsel that is electrically charged. Good times. But the way that they structured their stories wasn't necessarily sensationalistic. I mean, obviously, it's horror.
Yeah.
It's going to
Right.
be gory and dark and scary.
Mm-hmm.
But is it right to say there was nothing just gratuitous? Like,
Yeah.
there was nothing that was just shocking for the sake of being
No.
shocking?
Right.
Aside from the
No.
tinsel. Haha.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I would say there was a reason for everything, and it all kind of played in
Yeah.
together.
So, we've talked about things that make some of the places we've experienced different.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that extreme haunts have in common?
They're usually all touch. They have,
Yeah.
they usually use all of your senses.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, is Face Your Fears considered a...
I don't know that it's extreme, but it is
it's just
touch.
Yeah. I think
It
it's
is
just
touch, and it is...
Yeah.
Though they're reasonably aggressive with the touch. They're not just...
Yeah.
We're going to throw you in a closet and pretend to, chop up your friend with a chainsaw kind of touch. They all have waivers.
Yes,
You always have to
Yeah.
consent. You always have to
that's true.
say that you are willing to go through the experience.
There's even some other haunts that have the waivers that are... Maniac Mountain's not touched, but I think they might accidentally touch you.
Yeah,
But
which
there's a
is-
waiver there.
There's a waiver there
Yeah.
for good reason,
Right,
because
yeah.
it's Maniac Mountain in West Virginia it's the house is a fairly confined space. There's kind of a
Music,
post-apocalyptic junkyard with some low ceilings. So it's not so much we're going to touch you as it could happen, and we want you to be aware of the environments you're going into. But any good extreme haunt is going to let you know ahead of time, and is going to give you a way to opt out.
Yes, you will have a safe word, and everything will stop.
Yeah. Or
They
you'll
will
have like a
immediately
necklace
stop.
or a bracelet that you wear
You
to
could take
signal
off.
that you're willing to be messed with, and when you reach a point where you are no longer willing to be messed with, you can remove it. So extreme haunts engage all your senses. They are usually fairly touch heavy. There's a waiver, there's a safe word, or some means of opting out. The content can be more adult.
Yeah, I would say that.
It can be more you like, be prepared for R-rated language.
Yeah, and maybe
R-rated
some
scenarios.
adult themes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking of...
She goes into this
I start
happy
thinking
little
of things. I'm like,
reverie.
oh, yes. That thing. I'm just going to laugh about it, not talk about it. The specimen samples. That was also in the basement. That was, like, more recent. And then she'd just be like, oops, and just, like, wipe it on you. Gross.
Yeah. But that makes me think of other places that are touch haunts. Or can be touch haunts. This is something that's happened over the last few years that's fascinating to me. A lot of places have added a touch option.
Yes.
Where you can wear a glowing bracelet or a glowing necklace or glowing something that signals your...
Glowing something.
Just stop. That signals your willingness to be messed with. And that made me think of Nightmare Cleveland, which is a fairly new sci-fi themed haunted attraction in obviously Cleveland, where you're walking through an abandoned lab and the workers will in fact wipe the samples on you.
Yeah. They also, I think, have a spray too.
They do.
And
they do.
Yes.
And their sibling haunted house, Chippewa Lake, does similar stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Chippewa Lake Slaughterhouse also has a touch option.
Yeah.
But I think it signals like people's desire to participate more, to be more of the story, to not just walk past tableaus and go, oh, that looks really cool.
Yeah.
But
and I think that option also lets people see what it's like. Because I can't tell you how many people I've heard afterwards say, oh, I could have done that. But beforehand, they're like, heck no, you're crazy for getting the touch option. But afterwards, they realized what it was. Like, I don't know what they think happens. Like, especially, it's not an extreme haunt. There's a touch option. But people really are...
Well, as we were talking about at the beginning, I think that there's a notion that an extreme haunt with a touch option is necessarily kind of sexy or whatever. And, you know, it's not.
No.
It's about adding another dimension to the experience.
Right, exactly.
And, you know, if you want to live through a horror movie, see what you would do, places like that are a
perfect,
great option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You can get involved a little bit more because a haunted house is very much like that. You go through and you're like in the middle of a live action horror movie, but nothing can happen to you. Nothing can touch you.
Yeah.
You know, and this is just a little bit more of a step towards it feeling like you're really there.
Yeah.
In a safe environment.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts about extreme haunted houses? Have you been to one? Would you go to one?
Yeah.
Has this piqued your interest? I mean, we enjoy them.
Yes. Tell us about the ones you've been to.
Yeah. We're like, tell us.
I know.
Tell us.
So where is that?
But we're interested in seeing what scares people, and how the boundaries are pushed.
Yes.
So let us know. I think next week maybe family friendly.
Oh, okay.
And talk about family friendly and what that means, and we'll talk a little bit about our journey with family friendly haunts and how we discovered like dimensions of fun and fear that we weren't aware of.
Yes.
So if you're interested in extreme haunts, if there's something we should check out, if you have thoughts about this, drop a comment, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.